So, so this video is sort of an introduction to Module 1. And I like for each of the modules to start with an introduction. So for this module, the areas that we're going to focus on are, well, the first one is really the role of the teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. And I'll talk a lot about this because it's really an important concept for you to think about. The role changes, kind of depends on where you're teaching, but always thinking about, you know, my role. Sometimes you're the special education teacher. Sometimes you're like the regular education teacher, but always you are the specialist, the expert for language, really, and communication for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. Language being the code, and communication, the process or using the code for communication. I think on the DHH program for D2L, you have a link with the CED standards, and these are the standards for teachers. If you look at those, you'll find many of the skills that you need are to support, to develop language and communication. Also, the standards for students, and you know about the Common Core standards that you all are using now. Even at WSD, you have the Common Core. Those skills for students are very related to language development and communication. So it's important. It's an important part of your role as a teacher. In this module, we're really reviewing, reading about, thinking about important concepts or even terms that we're all going to use, sort of common language. And so as you read, you're to pick out terms that we'll use a lot when we're talking about language and communication development in children. So there are just a few things I want to kind of emphasize. The first is I want you to learn and really remember Bruner and the three levels of representation. You'll read about that. Also, the language categories. There's content, form, and function of language. And so really think about what those mean, and we'll use those terms a lot throughout the semester. And then the third area to think about as you're reading is kind of the role of cognition in language. So categories of language and connections, kind of between concepts is important. The other thing that I want you to think about is in your teaching. So maybe you're teaching language directly, one student or a group directly, maybe indirectly. So maybe it is through conversation that you're teaching language. so those are important kind of ways to think about your role. The other kind of important thing that you'll read about is the role of modeling and imitation. So those are two really important ways that you teach language, and I'll emphasize those kind of over and over and over again. So for this module, your job is you have launch, and then you have explore. Third, you have summarize and apply. So apply. And so let's look at the site. This is really one way to monitor or track your progress as you're kind of moving through the course. Each module has these 4 things. For Module 1, here's your launch, and you have a question that you answer, and this is on Tuesday. Then you have explore, so you're exploring, but you're reading my notes, and there are a couple of articles for you to read, right? And then the third is the summarize, and this is the gist, and it's a form that first you talk about in the dialogue, the online dialogue. Then individually you complete the form with what are key or important terms that we're going to use as kind of our shared common language. And that form is right here. And then the apply is really you're kind of setting up a plan for studying. It might be a review, studying language concepts in English and in ASL. And really, this is important because you really will need to know these so that you can teach them to students. So you have to really know them well. And that is Module 1. So, good luck on Module 1. Pay attention to dates. It's important that the deadlines are important. Don't go beyond a deadline. Really stay with the dates that you need for completing. So it's important. Okay. All right. We'll see you online.